beloved child of the Most High, the profound exhaustion you carry in your weary bones is not a testament to your failure. It is the sacred evidence that you have been standing firm in the battle. You must learn to distinguish between these two realities, for the confusion between them has quietly stolen your peace and clouded your vision. You have felt the heaviness settle behind your eyes, and you have watched how every single step now demands a measure of strength you thought you had long depleted. You have looked upon this fatigue and mistakenly interpreted it as proof that you are losing your footing. Hear now the voice of your Creator, for I bring you a truth that will forever reshape how you walk through this season of testing. Your weariness is never a symptom of defeat. It never was in the days of old, and it is certainly not true in this present hour. It is the holy mark of divine endurance. It is the sacred ache that comes from refusing to bow your knee when the entire world demands your surrender. That steadfast refusal is not your own doing. I breathed that beautiful persistence into your spirit before you ever drew your first breath. Surrender to despair was never written into the scroll of your destiny. I ask you to sit quietly in this revelation. Let it pierce past the shallow comfort of passing words and sink deep into the marrow of your soul, where you have been questioning whether your labor bears any eternal fruit. I know that shadow has visited your mind in the stillness of the night. It comes when the distractions of the day fade away and silence fills the room. It speaks with a voice that masquerades as pure reason. It whispers that your efforts are in vain. It tells you that nothing is changing and that others seem to march forward while you remain anchored in the same soil. You have been tempted to trust that lie because it wears the garments of logic, but that voice is utterly blind to the reality of heaven. It cannot perceive the horizon that stretches before my eyes. It does not know the secrets I hold. What I know is this: the ground beneath your feet is more unshakable than it has ever been. The circumstances around you may still churn like a restless sea, but something profound has taken root within your spirit. You have sunk deeper into my presence than you ever dared to dream. Consider the nature of a true foundation. No traveler stops to marvel at the excavation site. No one takes photographs of the raw earth, the heavy iron, and the wet concrete that is poured into the dark. To the hurried observer, it appears as a barren pit. It looks like nothing but broken ground and relentless toil. A passing stranger might wonder why so much strength is spent on digging into the dust, yet every master builder knows the sacred truth. Ask anyone who has watched a mighty sanctuary rise from an empty valley. Ask those who have witnessed a dwelling place for the divine being formed from humble clay. They will declare without hesitation that the foundation determines the destiny of the entire structure. Without that hidden bedrock, nothing will stand. Without it, the most brilliant walls and the tallest towers will collapse under the weight of a single storm. Everything depends upon what happens in the unseen places. Everything relies upon the quiet work that draws no applause and garners no earthly recognition. The most critical phase of any holy work occurs in the darkness where human eyes cannot penetrate. This is precisely where I have placed you. You are walking through the foundation season of your life. You are in the phase that yields no polished results and offers no immediate glory. It is the most demanding chapter of the construction, yet it carries the greatest eternal weight. Every wall that will one day shelter the broken will rise because of the weight you are bearing in secret. Every room that will one day echo with redeemed joy and holy purpose will stand because of the invisible, uncelebrated labor you are offering right now beneath the surface of this life. I command you to cease apologizing for your current season. I forbid you from measuring your hidden preparation against another person's visible harvest. They are reading a different page of the divine narrative. Their timeline does not dictate your sacred blueprint. The fact that their walls are rising while your hands are still digging into the earth does not mean you are lagging behind. It means I am designing a sanctuary that requires profound depth. True depth demands patience. It requires unhurried, unobserved time that feels like a wilderness to your aching heart. Yet that very time is being measured with divine precision. You will only fully understand the masterpiece of this delay when you look back from the heights of my finished work. I have watched you observe the lives of others and wonder what favor they received that you have been denied. You question why their prayers seem to break through the heavens more quickly. You ask why their trials seem to resolve with such swift clarity. You marvel at how their narratives appear to skip over the long chapters of waiting and move straight into seasons of abundance. But you are comparing your hidden battles with their public victories. That comparison is a deception, no matter how convincingly it speaks to your weary heart. You were not present in their silent vigils. You do not know the tears they shed in the dark or the wrestling matches they endured before the dawn broke. You do not see the cost that was etched into their character. You only see the structure that now stands in the sunlight. If you could peel back the finished surfaces and trace the seams of their history, you would recognize that their hidden season mirrored your own. Deep foundations are never laid with ease. They are forged through relentless faith in conditions that overwhelm the flesh. They only make sense when the temple finally rises and the glory descends upon the altar. There are voices around you that look only at the surface and render judgments that break my heart. They witness your struggle and label it stagnation. They observe your waiting and call it wasted days. They see your tears and mistake them for a lack of faith. But I am the master architect who holds the plumb line over your soul. I speak with absolute authority over your days. Nothing you are enduring is being lost to the wind. The fire that surrounds you is refining a tenacity that comfort could never forge. The pressure you feel is compacting a character that will withstand the fiercest gales of life. You are not sinking into the dust. You are being anchored into the living stone. The work I am doing in you is moving steadily toward its appointed completion. Keep your eyes fixed on the unseen, for the hands that guide this excavation will never lose their grip. The season of waiting is not a barren wasteland, but a sacred cultivation of patience that will become your most precious strength when the appointed time of acceleration arrives. Your tears are not falling upon barren dust. They are watering the hidden soil that is preparing to yield a harvest so magnificent that the memory of your planting in the shadows will be entirely consumed by the radiant joy of what rises from the earth. If those who watch your journey could perceive the divine architecture behind the process, they would cease offering shallow counsel and begin to offer reverent awe. What is unfolding within you is not a defect to be repaired. It is a sacred masterpiece in the making. Great works of art are never rushed to completion. They are shaped with deliberate and eternal thoroughness. I have never ceased to watch over you. I am not observing from a distant throne, like a detached overseer peering through a high window. I have walked beside you through every valley and every silent hour of this season. I am close enough to feel the exact weight upon your shoulders. I am near enough to catch every whispered word that escapes your lips when you believe the world has gone deaf. I listen to your cries on the darkest nights, when the pressure of your circumstances made each breath feel like a heavy labor. I received the prayers that began with fervent conviction, but gradually faded into quiet sighs because language itself failed you. I witnessed the private dialogues within your own heart, where you summoned the strength to endure for merely one more day. You have been negotiating with your own exhaustion, pleading for a few more hours of resolve before weariness threatened to claim your spirit. I want you to understand that every single moment of that struggle has been recorded in heaven. These are not marks of your frailty. They are badges of a fierce spiritual warfare. You have been engaged in a holy battle against the temptation of surrender. Every morning you choose to rise again is a victory won upon the spiritual battlefield. The world does not award crowns for this kind of steadfast fighting. There are no earthly ceremonies for those who simply refuse to remain defeated. There is no public applause for the soul that drags itself upright one final time after being crushed by trials that far exceed mortal capacity. Yet I maintain a celestial ledger that earthly eyes cannot read. Within that sacred archive, your name is inscribed among those who endured when all human strength had faded. This roster is far more exclusive and far more honored than any earthly registry of heroes. I know the precise nature of the burdens you bear in secret. I will name them so you may comprehend the depth of my intimate knowledge. You carry the heavy weight of financial strain that turns every simple necessity into a complex calculation. You review and reconsider your resources, striving to make impossible numbers align when they stubbornly refuse to balance. Anxiety arrives uninvited alongside every unexpected demand. You face sudden repairs that cannot be delayed and medical needs that disregard the limits of your provision. The arithmetic of survival runs through your mind, even in moments that should belong to rest. This mental accounting shadows every meal and every journey to the marketplace. You weigh what is essential against what must wait. You have carried this heavy load with a quiet dignity that moves my heart. I do not say this because I doubted your capacity. I say it because witnessing courage in action stirs my love, even though I am the very source who placed such resilience within you. You have made profound sacrifices that the world never counted. You have willingly gone without, so that those around you might be sustained. You have accepted responsibilities that did not belong to you, because the task required attention, and you refused to let your loved ones suffer in your absence. This quiet and unseen sacrifice is the very material I use to build eternal foundations. It is stronger than forged iron and more enduring than ancient stone. I have gathered every single instance of your selfless giving, and I am weaving it into the bedrock of your future. There is also the relational tension that has been quietly draining your spirit in ways that leave no visible mark. You recall a strained conversation with someone you deeply cherish that ended without peace and continues to echo in your thoughts. A subtle distance has grown between you and a companion who once walked closely at your side. Neither of you fully understands how this divide formed, and both of you feel powerless to cross it. Loneliness descends upon you even in crowded spaces, because the connections around you have become merely functional rather than deeply life-giving. The chasm between mere proximity and true communion is wide enough to cause profound aching. I observe all of this clearly. I see how relational weariness multiplies your financial strain, which in turn deepens your spiritual fatigue until the combined weight seems to exceed the carrying capacity of a single mortal life. Hear this truth with absolute certainty. The load indeed surpasses what one human soul was ever meant to bear. This is precisely why you were never created to carry it in isolation. The fact that you have continued to shoulder burdens meant to be shared, because you refused to trouble others, reveals the profound nature of your love. It shows a heart that chooses to absorb hardship rather than distribute it to those you cherish. That instinct is profoundly noble. Yet it becomes a heavy chain when it prevents you from receiving the help I am actively sending through the very community you seek to shield. Understand this clearly. Accepting grace from others is not a sign of frailty. It is an act of divine wisdom. I have carefully positioned specific individuals in your path who are both able and willing to share the weight you have carried alone. Allowing them to help is not placing a burden upon them. It is honoring the sacred purpose for which they were placed near you. I also intimately understand your spiritual weariness. I know how prayer has begun to feel more like a rigid obligation than a living conversation. I see how reading my sacred word has transformed into a task to be finished, rather than a banquet table where you sit and feast. I recognize how worship that once lifted your spirit now occasionally feels like lifting a heavy stone. This fatigue is not evidence that your bond with me is breaking. It is simply proof that you are mortal and profoundly tired. The emotional reserves that once fueled your spiritual expressions have been drawn down by the unrelenting demands of this particular wilderness. The sacred connection between us does not require you to feel inspired in order to remain entirely real. My grace is not contingent upon your emotional stamina. It flows freely into the dry places of your soul. It meets you in the quiet moments when you have no words left to speak. It sustains you when your faith feels more like a whisper than a shout. You do not need to manufacture strength to earn my favor. You only need to rest in the certainty that I am still working. The covenant of our fellowship does not require triumphant hymns or visible tears of joy to remain unbroken. Some of the most sacred moments of communion between your soul and my heart occurred when you simply sat in profound silence. You were too weary to shape prayers with your lips. You were too exhausted to manufacture emotions for my consumption. You merely rested in my presence without any performance or pretense. Do not let your spirit tremble at the dryness you are experiencing. Do not mistake this season for divine withdrawal or abandonment. It is actually a profound closeness forged under heavy weight. Consider how a bow is drawn back to its fullest tension before the arrow takes flight. The tension does not signify failure. It signifies stored might. Your spiritual life is currently being drawn tight by my sovereign hand. It is not diminished in value. It is being charged with holy purpose. When the appointed time arrives and the tension releases, the forward momentum will leave you in reverent awe. I must now confront the quiet whispers of discouragement that have been attacking your sense of worth. The enemy has been sowing the deceitful notion that the weight of your current trial is a direct measure of your value to me. He tempts you to believe that if you were truly cherished, your path would be smooth and devoid of resistance. He points to those whose journeys appear effortless and convinces you that they possess some hidden virtue you lack. This deception is so cunning that it slips past your spiritual armor without triggering an alarm. It cloaks itself in the guise of modest reflection while pretending to offer honest evaluation. Yet beneath that careful disguise lies the ancient serpent nature of outright falsehood. Your true worth was eternally fixed before the foundations of this world were laid. It was spoken into existence when my hands formed your inward parts. It was breathed into your nostrils when life first stirred within you. It was irrevocably sealed by the precious blood of my Son upon the cross. That sacrifice was so infinitely costly that it must permanently silence every question regarding your dignity. Your value does not rise and fall with the balance in your earthly accounts. It does not shrink when human bonds are severed. It does not fade when earthly schemes collapse or when heaven seems silent to your cries. No circumstance you endure can alter the eternal truth of your identity. That truth stands immovable. You belong to me entirely, unchangeably. Without condition or caveat, you are mine. Nothing that rightfully belongs to my sovereign care will ever be left in a state of ruin or incompleteness. I never initiate a work of grace without the absolute power and willingness to bring it to glorious maturity. I do not cultivate souls with the secret intention of abandoning them midway through the harvest. I do not lavish my boundless love, my costly sacrifice, and my unwavering attention upon a life merely to withdraw when the refining fire grows hottest. Such inconsistency is foreign to my nature. It has never characterized my dealings with my beloved children since the dawn of time. The discouragement that attempts to convince you otherwise operates on bankrupt reasoning and manufactured falsehoods. I now desire to speak directly concerning the external voices that have poured oil upon the flame of your discouragement. I am not addressing the internal whispers of your own weary heart. I am addressing those who observe your journey from a distance and offer counsel they lack the spiritual authority to give. Some among them truly meant no harm. They sincerely believed they were offering wisdom when they proposed that you must be at fault. They suggested your methods require adjustment. They implied the delayed breakthrough stems from a hidden flaw in your diligence or your posture or your trust. Those words cut deeply because they fell upon ground already softened by grief and exhaustion. You were already wrestling with identical doubts, and hearing them spoken aloud by another lent those shadows a false gravity and an unearned credibility. Because you honor fellowship enough to weigh the words of others with sincerity, you allowed those statements room to take root within you. You turned them repeatedly in your mind, inspecting every angle, wondering if the criticism held truth, even when the delivery felt heavy with judgment rather than grace. I will spare your exhausted mind the burden of further investigation into their claims. The verdict is clear and absolute. Their assessment does not align with heavenly reality. They were merely casting the shadows of their own spiritual limitations across your sacred journey. They attempted to judge the exterior of a sanctifying process they have never walked from within. Their conclusions were therefore bound to miss the mark entirely. Others among these observers harbor no benevolent intent whatsoever. They witnessed your trials and recognized in your struggle a reflection of their own unresolved fears. Rather than facing their own hidden fractures, they chose to fixate upon yours. They pointed at the scaffolding of your life and pronounced judgment upon the final structure, as though they possessed divine sight. They possess no such vision. The sacred blueprints exist exclusively within the council between your spirit and my throne. The designs inscribed upon those pages carry such glorious purpose that they would hush every accusing tongue instantly. If those critics could glimpse even the smallest portion of my master plan, they would fall on their knees in reverent silence. Then there remain those who simply walked away without a word. They stood beside you when the sun shone brightly upon your days, yet they slowly vanished when the terrain grew steep and the shadows lengthened. Their departure left a unique wound because it exposed the fragile nature of those earthly attachments. Casual companionship is abundant in this world, and realizing that a person you trusted for every season was merely a visitor for fair weather brings a confusion that cuts deeper than the separation itself. It tempts you to doubt the clarity of your own discernment regarding every bond you have ever formed. I call you now to turn that questioning toward a higher truth. Rather than asking why your perception failed, ask why my refining winnowing was so necessary, for that is precisely what has unfolded. The pressure has acted as a divine sieve. It has separated the chaff from the wheat. It has laid bare the true nature of every connection. What stands firm after the winnowing is infinitely more dependable than what filled your hands before the trial began. I did not author the betrayals that pierced your trust. I never orchestrate human cruelty. nor do I script the sorrowful choices that arise from the exercise of mortal free will. Yet I possess unmatched wisdom in taking the wreckage of those broken decisions and using them to realign your life with far greater precision than you held before the fracture. I gather the scattered stones of human failure, and I lay them down as firm pathways beneath your feet. I step into the hollow void left by departure, and I fill it with companions who walk in step with your true destiny. Those who walked away did not leave a permanent vacancy. They vacated territory that was intentionally kept empty for a higher purpose. That space stands consecrated. It is reserved for covenant ties that will endure under heavy weight. It is reserved for friendships rooted in eternal substance rather than fleeting comfort. It is reserved for sacred alliances that will remain unshaken when the final tempest has swept across the horizon. Those adversaries and accusers who launched verbal arrows crafted specifically to pierce your spirit must eventually comprehend a law they rarely grasp in their lifetimes. The curses and condemnations they hurled into the atmosphere never traveled in a single straight line toward your heart. Those very declarations circled back with divine momentum upon the heads that spoke them. What was maliciously designed to strip you of your dignity ultimately served only to expose the true condition of their own souls. The cruelty they displayed did not expose your lack. It revealed the profound emptiness within their own souls. A heart that rests in divine peace never expends its strength to dismantle another human being. The relentless energy they devoted to shaking your confidence was merely proof of the formidable potential they recognized in you. No one strikes at what they deem worthless. They only raise their fists against what they dread might flourish. I call you now to forgive them. I do not ask this because their actions warrant grace. I ask this because your spirit deserves the glorious liberation that true pardon brings. Harboring unforgiveness forges a heavy iron chain around your ankle. It binds you tightly to the very person who wounded you. It forces you to drag their shadow into every sacred space you enter. This burden drains your vitality and serves no holy purpose. You must release them into my hands. Do not release them because the injury was minor. Release them because your destiny is vast. Carrying the suffocating weight of bitterness into your tomorrow will exact a toll, far greater than any earthly apology could repay. Granting forgiveness does not declare their sin acceptable. It declares that you have chosen to let the past stop dictating the path of your future. Hear my solemn promise concerning those who plotted to dismantle what I am carefully constructing within you. Their schemes carry a divine expiration date, of which they remain entirely unaware. The conspiracies they wove against your peace are already crumbling under the crushing weight of their own malice. I require no earthly vengeance to settle the scales. The natural consequence of warring against one I have sealed with. My protection is the complete failure of their weapons. Every snare they laid shall catch the heel of its maker. Every falsehood they whispered into the wind shall return upon the tongue that spoke it. Their deceit will ultimately unveil the true nature of their own spirit, rather than tarnish the reputation of the one they sought to harm. You are freed from the duty of defending your own name. I am your shield and your righteous vindicator. I take your defense as a sacred covenant, just as I closed the mouth of the lion for Daniel, just as I parted the waters of the Red Sea for my people. I will clear the path before you with the same sovereign power. I must also address the quiet war you have waged within your own mind. You have allowed their accusations to echo in the corridors of your heart long after the battle ceased. You dissected every harsh syllable. You wondered if their venom contained a hidden truth you were obligated to examine. Honest self-examination holds profound wisdom when it flows from a holy source. There is a vast chasm between viewing your soul through my illuminating grace and scrutinizing yourself through the bitter lens of one who holds no love for you. My light reveals areas needing refinement with tender purpose and healing intent. Their words expose nothing beyond the restless envy and spiritual hunger of their own hearts. Cease using their criticism as a measuring stick for your worth. It was never forged for your edification. It was crafted solely to bring your spirit to a standstill. The very fact that it has caused you to hesitate grants it far more authority than it was ever allotted by heaven. You stand far taller than the fleeting opinions cast at your feet. This strength does not come from being impervious to human speech. You are deeply woven with a capacity to feel. I designed you with an open and receptive heart. Your true anchor is not your own resilience. Your true anchor is the declaration that proceeds from my mouth concerning your identity and your calling. My verdict over your life has never shifted. My estimation of your divine capacity has never been diminished. The sacred purpose I inscribed upon your soul before time began has never been revoked or transferred to another due to a season of slow progress. You are exactly who I have always spoken you to be. That heavenly decree carries infinitely more weight than the combined voices of every earthly critic who has ever drawn breath. Let us now look upon the specific vision that discouragement has desperately tried to bury beneath the soil of doubt. You know precisely which dream I am addressing. It is the vision you guarded so fiercely within your chest that you scarcely breathed its name aloud. You feared that speaking it into the open would somehow leave it vulnerable to theft or ruin. It is the vision you pursued with a prayerful intensity that startled your own spirit. You labored toward it with a devotion that demanded the surrender of your comfort. It cost you your convenience. It cost you the approval of those who could never comprehend why you would sacrifice so much for a reality that had not yet fully formed. That vision is breathing with eternal life. It is not merely surviving. It is expanding in the hidden depths of the earth, just as every mighty harvest grows before it breaks the surface. A seed does not broadcast its progress to the surrounding soil. It simply drives its roots downward and pushes upward with relentless quietness. It presses forward in complete obscurity. It pushes through the crushing weight of the darkness. Then one day, without warning, a vibrant green shoot emerges where only barren dirt once lay. Those who stand at a distance witness the sudden sprout and call it a miracle of haste. The seed alone understands the sacred truth. The emergence is the glorious climax of a long and silent labor that commenced the very moment it was covered in soil. Your dream resides in that sacred pushing phase. The burial was never meant to be a funeral. It was a divine planting. The distinction between a grave and a garden holds the key to your entire breakthrough. Remember how the Lord Jesus was laid in the tomb. The stone rolled into place looked like the end of everything. It was actually the beginning of resurrection. Your waiting follows that same holy pattern. I have measured precisely what it cost you to cling to that vision while circumstances conspired to force you to drop it. Voices surrounded you. Some of them belonged to those who truly care for your welfare. They urged you to embrace realism. They wielded the language of practicality, as if human caution and holy faith shared the same foundation. They counseled you to lower your expectations. They told you to accept the rigid boundaries of your present season. They advised you to stop hoping for an outcome that seemed mathematically impossible according to earthly calculations. A portion of your spirit listened to their reasoning. A portion of your mind considered releasing your grip. You considered it not because you believed their logic. You considered it because maintaining your hold required a strength you doubted you still possessed. Yet you refused to let go. You clung to Thaframs with the same desperation as a drowning soul clinging to a lifeline. You did not hold on because the posture was comfortable. You held on because surrendering meant sinking beneath the waves. I observed you holding fast through seasons of financial impossibility. I watched you endure the relational strain of walking alone. I witnessed the emotional exhaustion of pouring hope into a promise that refused to appear on a human timetable. You persevered because beneath the overwhelming fatigue lies a truth deeper than discouragement can ever penetrate. You recognized that this dream is not a mere mortal wish, it is a living decree. It is my eternal word. I spoke this purpose over your existence before your memory could even form its first recollection. I placed this calling within you through the blood of the Lamb. You are carrying a portion of my kingdom in your hands. I command you to cease interpreting divine patience as divine refusal. A delayed blessing and a denied request are as different as the morning sun and the midnight sky. Confusing the two is as foolish as mistaking deep slumber for the finality of death. The sleeping body appears entirely still. The lifeless body appears entirely still. One is quietly gathering supernatural strength for the awakening that must come. The other will never rise again. Your season of waiting is not a tomb. It is a sanctuary of preparation. The heavens are aligning every fragment of your history. The very ground is shifting beneath your feet to bear the weight of the glory I am about to unveil. Lift your eyes toward the horizon. The wind of the Spirit is already stirring in your direction. The waters of your destiny are beginning to part. Prepare your heart to receive what I have ordained for you since the foundation of the world. What appears to you as a profound stillness within your soul is not the cold silence of the grave. It is the sacred quiet of the incubation chamber. A living promise is taking shape within you. Holy strength is gathering in the hidden places. Complexity is being woven into your spirit as you are prepared for a life that will soon breathe beyond the confines of your current waiting. I am the master builder who oversees every intricate detail of this formation. I am ensuring that every structural beam of your destiny is aligned and fortified before the hour of your manifestation arrives. I have never delivered a fractured answer to a faithful petition. I have never released a blessing in its infancy merely because your weary heart grew restless with the appointed season. My divine chronometer measures realities that human impatience cannot perceive. It weighs the readiness of your spirit. It surveys the spiritual climate surrounding your path. It aligns supporting circumstances in perfect harmony. It guarantees the enduring sustainability of every gift I bestow. A treasure handed into an unprepared vessel does not bring joy. It brings only devastation. I love you with an everlasting devotion that refuses to overwhelm you with a blessing you are not yet equipped to carry. The season of waiting is your divine shield. The delay is the very process of your maturation. The silence is a strategic refuge where your roots grow deep. Every breath of your labor is etched into my eternal record. The devotion you pour into your daily duties is not overlooked. The steadfastness you offer, when the work feels monotonous, is highly valued. The courage you summon to show up when your own strength feels entirely depleted is witnessed with profound grace. I will surely cause the work of your hands to flourish. This is not a vague promise drifting in distant clouds. It is a covenant decree already in motion. The abundance I prepare may not wear the face you anticipated. Divine provision consistently defies human expectation. I supply according to the depths of needs you have yet to discover. Yet my supply will always manifest in the precise form required for your wholeness. History bears witness that my design surpasses every earthly blueprint you have ever imagined. I behold the complete tapestry of your existence. I see chapters still hidden behind the veil of time. I provide with omniscient grace. Your financial burdens will be lifted. I speak this plainly because truth demands unclouded declaration. The heavy pressure that has constricted your daily survival is not permanent. The exhaustion that makes generosity feel like an impossible dream will soon pass. That heavy yoke bears a fixed expiration date. This deliverance comes not because I disregard your present struggle. It arrives because true resolution requires more than mere currency. I am restructuring the very channels through which grace flows into your household. I am clearing blocked pathways. I am unlocking sealed doors. I am establishing rivers of blessing that did not exist when this season of trial began. Some of those rivers are currently carving through the very circumstances you desperately wish to change. The vocation that feels stagnant today is actually fertile ground where I am planting your future harvest. The competencies you were forced to forge through scarcity will become the master keys to doors you cannot yet see. This is how my wisdom consistently operates. I utilize boundaries to cultivate strengths that flourish only in the soil of constraint. The discipline of budgeting has taught you profound stewardship. The frustration of limited options has awakened holy creativity within your spirit. The necessity of doing more with less has forged an efficiency that the comfortably complacent never acquire. These are not mere consolations for your trials. They are divine weapons being tempered in the fire of your limitation. When the season of scarcity finally lifts, and it shall surely lift by my decree, the virtues you forged will remain eternally yours. They will become permanent pillars of your character. They will serve as tools you carry into every coming era. This truth applies whether that era brings drought or overflowing plenty. Your household rests deeply within my sovereign care. It rests just as heavily upon your mortal heart. The anxieties you carry for your beloved are not forgotten. The longing to nourish them in body and in spirit is honored. The weight of feeling responsible for their welfare in realms far beyond your control is shared by my infinite strength. I hold every single one of those burdens together with you. The health of your family is under my watchful eye. The trajectory of their steps is guided by my steady hand. The choices that stir your spirit with greater fear than your own decisions are already accounted for in my plan. I am moving in their lives with the exact same precision and covenant faithfulness that guides your path. Some pauses in your own journey are intricately linked to the timing required for those around you. Divine blessings never descend in isolation. They arrive within living ecosystems. I am orchestrating the seasons of multiple lives simultaneously. I am ensuring that when the breakthrough finally dawns, it will cascade not only upon you, but upon the entire web of souls your life touches. I call you now to transform your perspective regarding the barriers before you. Every wall you have faced was a boundary of grace. Every gate that remained firmly shut was a guardian of your destiny. Every trail that seemed to terminate in barren dust was merely a detour toward higher ground. None of these were instruments of my wrath. They were compasses of my mercy. I was gently diverting you from destinations that would have fractured your soul. I was steering you away from paths that shimmered with earthly allure, but led only to ruin. A closed gate does not signify rejection. It frequently signifies a divine redirection to a higher elevation. Prepare your spirit to step into the new path that is already unfolding before your eyes. There are moments when my answer to your earnest petition is simply not yet. I have prepared a richer provision in the next corridor of your journey. You will never discover that blessing if you remain fixated upon the threshold that stands firm before you. I call you to trust the doors I have sealed shut. They have shielded your spirit more times than your weary eyes can perceive. The heavy frustration you experienced while standing before those barriers was only a passing shadow. That temporary sorrow will dissolve into profound gratitude when your eyes finally behold the grace waiting on the other side. You will understand that every sealed passage was a divine hedge of protection. Many of those closed thresholds were positioned to guard you from those who would have exploited your generosity while remaining utterly indifferent to the condition of your soul. Other barriers were erected to shelter you from environments that shimmered with worldly promise, yet harbored subtle poisons capable of eroding the very virtues I am cultivating within your spirit. I closed certain passages entirely, because the path beyond them would have led you into a wilderness where the sacred calling planted in your heart could never take root. I restrict your steps just as a loving father draws a sharp blade from the hands of a wandering child. My restraint is never born of deprivation. It is always born of fierce devotion. Your momentary dismay at being denied access to a glittering danger does not diminish the eternal wisdom of my guarding hand. I remove what would destroy you, so that I may preserve what will define you. I must remind you now of the fundamental truth governing my eternal nature. I am perpetually at work. Even when the heavens appear as brass, and you can trace no visible evidence of my hand, I am actively rearranging the fragments of your days. I am aligning seasons. I am redirecting the currents of circumstance. I am softening hardened hearts. I am opening hidden channels of provision while quietly sealing every point of vulnerability. I am orchestrating outcomes with a meticulous precision that would leave you breathless if you could witness the full tapestry of my design. The profound silence that sometimes envelops you is never a sign of my absence. It is the most profound and intricate phase of my redemptive labor. A master surgeon does not speak during the most critical incision. Absolute focus demands absolute stillness. There are profound workings occurring within your spirit right now that require an exacting intervention which cannot be broadcast or explained. The quiet you endure is the sacred space where I am weaving your restoration. You must learn to anchor your soul in that holy quiet. It is not the empty silence of a departed king. It is not the cold silence of indifference. It is not the distracted silence of one who has turned his attention toward matters of lesser consequence. It is the reverent silence of a creator who is executing the most vital and delicate work of restoration with unwavering tenderness. It is the focused concentration of a redeemer who holds your fractured pieces in his palms. I am not absent when the voices cease. I am simply drawing nearer in the depths of your waiting. The stillness is my sanctuary. Let it teach you to breathe in my presence rather than panic in my perceived delay. I must now address the nature of true perseverance because you have measured your endurance by a flawed standard. You believe that steadfastness requires the complete absence of a desire to surrender. Such a definition misunderstands the very heart of faith that is merely emotional numbness. Authentic perseverance acknowledges the heavy gravitational pull of surrender. It recognizes the profound relief that cessation would offer. It feels the exhaustion in every bone, yet it deliberately chooses to lift one weary foot and place it upon the path once more. If the temptation to abandon the journey held no weight whatsoever, then your continued steps would demand no valor. The very allure of surrender is what sanctifies your forward march. You have been walking this path despite the trembling. You have advanced through imperfect and fractured moments. You have carried more tears than your spirit could anticipate. You have carried less assurance than your heart desired. You have limped through valleys on certain days. You have crawled through dust on other occasions. You have dragged yourself forward on your hands and knees because standing upright was no longer possible. Yet halting your progress, remained entirely unacceptable. My ledger bears witness to your unbroken movement. I maintain records that earthly eyes cannot decipher and that despair cannot alter. These sacred archives chronicle the true narrative of a soul who was surrounded by every conceivable reason to collapse and who repeatedly chose to rise. Abandonment was never inscribed in the scroll of your destiny. I now turn my gaze toward the heavy guilt you bear. Over those fleeting moments when your faith grew dim, you treat those seasons of doubt as irrefutable evidence of your failure. You view them as permanent stains upon a heavenly ledger that will be summoned against you at the final judgment. Yet my mercy operates by an entirely different economy. I did not withdraw my presence when your confidence fractured. I did not catalog your words of desperate frustration as indictments against your character. I recognize those utterances as the inevitable overflow of a spirit bearing an unbearable weight. Water subjected to intense heat will inevitably transform and seek an escape. That release was never an act of treason against my throne. It was simply the natural response of a finite vessel. I fashioned those very release valves within your nature because I knew with perfect foresight the fierce heat of this present trial. I anticipated the pressure. I provided the means for your survival. You continue to carry specific failures not as refining lessons, but as permanent marks of disqualification. You dwell upon moments when you fell tragically short of your highest calling. You stare into the chasm between your noble intentions and your flawed actions. You have confessed these transgressions at my altar. Yet you refuse to fully release them because a lingering fear whispers that repeatedly receiving mercy for the same stumbling point might finally exhaust my patience. I command that fear to shatter before you. My grace is not a finite reservoir waiting to run dry. It is not a fragile vessel that empties when multitudes draw from it at once. It is a mighty river fed by an eternal spring that knows no bottom. It possesses no boundaries. It experiences no fatigue. Your persistent return to my presence with familiar struggles does not weary my spirit. It confirms a profound truth. It proves that you know exactly where to seek refuge when you stumble. That sacred instinct to turn toward my light when shame commands you to hide is itself a celestial wisdom. No earthly academy can teach this devotion. It is forged only in the sacred rhythm of falling and rising again. It is learned when you gather your shattered fragments and place them once more into the hands of the master craftsman who knows precisely how to reassemble them into glory. Cease your relentless punishment for not having reached a destination that still lies ahead. I speak these words with the boundless tenderness of an eternal Father who sees your exhaustion. You must stop adding the heavy chains of self-condemnation to a burden that was never meant for your shoulders to carry alone. The weight of your present circumstances is already substantial enough. Do not compound it with guilt over your inability to face every storm with flawless composure. I never demanded perfect execution from you in the midst of the wilderness. I only ever requested your steady companionship. I ask for your willing presence in the valley just as much as your joyful praise upon the mountain. Stay with me in the quiet. Keep walking beside me in the dust. The journey is still unfolding. I am preparing your next step even as you rest in this moment. The path ahead holds a new measure of light. You will soon perceive the direction I am clearing through the shadows. I called you to step into my presence. I did not ask for flawless devotion. I did not demand a spirit free from tears, or questions, or moments where your doubt stretched far beyond your own comfort. I simply asked you to draw near, and you have obeyed that gentle summons. You have come with inconsistent footsteps and heavy burdens. You have arrived with dragging heels and weary eyes, and a soul running on the very last reserves of earthly strength. Yet you appeared before me. That simple act of faith carries a weight that no earthly ledger could ever measure. Heaven records every single step toward the throne of grace. The host of angels notes your quiet arrival. I treasure your presence above all. For this willingness to draw near, even when your spirit is fractured and your strength is depleted, becomes the very raw material of a divine resilience that will sustain you for all your remaining days. My mercy completely covers the places where your spirit feels most naked and exposed. It blankets the failures born in moments of deep weakness. It washes over the choices made when loneliness or anger or desperation were temporarily eclipsed the convictions you hold in your clearer hours. It reaches into the hidden chambers where you entertain thoughts that would fill you with shame if they were ever spoken aloud. Every single fracture falls within the boundless reach of a grace that never audits offenses before extending forgiveness. Bring your unvarnished reality directly to me. Lay down the carefully edited narrative that omits your deepest regrets. Abandon the polite summary that skips the details you cannot bear to face. Bring the complete and unfiltered truth of your heart and your history. Watch in awe as it meets a love that already knew every hidden corner long before you found the courage to whisper your name. My pardon possesses no expiration date. Should you stumble once again, and the frailty of human nature in a broken world makes it inevitable that even the strongest believers will falter, I will never greet your return with a weary sigh or a lecture about past failures. I will welcome you exactly as I always receive the repentant heart. My arms remain wide open and perpetually ready to embrace. The door of reconciliation has never been locked or barred. You need no formal invitation and no resume of moral improvement to enter. Simply walk through the threshold exactly as you are and wherever you stand. What remains of you after the fall will be entirely sufficient. It has always been entirely sufficient for my redeeming power. The wilderness season you currently traverse holds a divine purpose that I long to unfold before your eyes. Understanding the design does not remove the weight of the burden, but it transforms your perspective from random suffering to intentional spiritual formation. Nothing you endure is lost to the winds of chance. The prolonged waiting that stretches your patience to its absolute limit serves a sacred purpose. The profound confusion that makes every crossroad feel like a perilous leap is part of the refining fire. The painful rejection that forces you back to the beginning with diminished confidence is shaping a deeper reliance on my wisdom. The silence you perceive from heaven, which sometimes feels less like holy mystery and more like abandonment, is merely the quiet space where my spirit is doing its deepest work. Every single element has been meticulously woven into a master design that accounts for eternal outcomes you cannot yet comprehend. I behold the completed masterpiece taking shape within your life. I hold the flawless architectural blueprints in my hands, while you stand amidst the noise of construction and the dust of daily struggle. I assure you with divine certainty that when you finally behold the finished work, the foundational season will align into perfect harmony. You will look back upon these exact days of discouragement and spiritual fatigue and witness the pieces locked together with glorious clarity. You will finally comprehend why the process demanded so much time and why the pruning had to reach so deeply. You will recognize why you could not bypass the very trials you desperately begged to escape. True understanding always arrives, but it comes only after the structure stands complete. Expecting a pilgrim to admire the beauty of a sanctuary while standing amidst exposed beams and scattered stone is asking for an impossibility I will never demand. I ask only that you trust the master builder who sees the end from the beginning. Let me paint the horizon with greater clarity. A reality awaits you that far exceeds the boundaries of your current imagination. You have been praying for relief, and relief is indeed woven into the fabric of your approaching dawn. Yet relief remains merely the smallest fragment of what I have prepared for your life. Beyond relief lies profound restoration. Beyond restoration comes expansive blessing. Beyond expansion awaits a sphere of influence and a legacy of impact that bears your name yet reaches far beyond what your unaided strength could ever accomplish. The trials you currently endure are forging the precise spiritual qualities required to steward such extraordinary favor. Without the patience forged in the furnace of waiting, sudden blessing would breed reckless impulsivity. Without the humility cultivated through seasons of failure, rapid promotion would breed dangerous arrogance. Without the compassion birthed from personal suffering, a public platform would breed cold indifference toward the broken. Without the desperate dependence on my spirit, developed through seasons of profound lack, overflowing abundance would breed self-reliance that quietly severs your connection to the source of all life. Every virtue this season produces corresponds directly to a sacred responsibility in the chapter yet to come. I am a builder of perfect integrity who will never permit you to step into a new era without the spiritual tools it demands. Do not measure your progress against the visible journeys of others. The apparent ease you observe in another life may be a genuine testimony, or it may be a carefully curated portrait that conceals their own hidden battles. Their blueprint shares no connection to your divine assignment. I am not raising the same sanctuary in every soul. The depth of your spiritual foundation corresponds directly to the eternal height of what I intend to raise above it. I am constructing something within your life that demands profound spiritual depth. I am building a sanctuary of refuge for others when the storms of life begin to rage. I am raising a structure that will stand immovable when lesser edifices collapse under pressures they were never reinforced to withstand. I am crafting a legacy that will endure for generations, long after the current threats have faded from human memory. Receive this truth as the highest honor it truly is. The intensity of the refining process directly reflects the magnitude of the eternal plan. Modest visions require shallow foundations. What I am fashioning within your soul is anything but modest. The voice of discouragement seeks to convince you that this struggle is the final destination. It wants you to believe your story has reached its permanent plateau and will never rise again. Yet discouragement is a profoundly unreliable narrator. It takes the pivotal middle chapter and falsely presents it as the final verse. It shows you the second act and desperately insists the story holds no third act. But I authored the entire narrative from eternity past. I know every scene and every dialogue and every turning point. I speak to you with the absolute authority of one who has never erred in my declarations, that this is not how your story concludes. This is the necessary tension preceding divine resolution. This is the holy compression preparing for glorious expansion. This is the reverent silence before the symphony that has already been composed and orchestrated and awaits only the lifting of the conductor hand. The music that eventually breaks forth will justify every single moment of quiet endurance that preceded it. The patience I am cultivating within you is never a passive state. It does not mean sitting in idle inactivity while merely hoping circumstances shift. The patience I am developing is vigorous and muscular and deeply intentional. It mirrors the patience of a faithful farmer who sows seed and continues to labor the earth. He does not work to force the seed to sprout prematurely, but because there is always vital work to accomplish while the invisible roots take hold beneath the surface. He uproots the competing weeds that threaten to drain the soil. He mends the protective fences that safeguard the tender crop. He prepares the storage houses for a harvest that has not yet broken through the ground, but is absolutely certain in its arrival. This is active and holy patience. It works diligently in the present while resting completely in the future. It refuses to interpret divine timing as divine denial. It labors and waits simultaneously because it recognizes these disciplines as complementary rather than contradictory. Passive waiting falsely claims that destiny will fulfill itself without our participation. Active patience confidently declares that destiny will unfold precisely because our faithful cooperation is part of the divine design. Choose the higher path. Work diligently while you wait. Prepare your spirit while you trust. Build eternal capacity in the present hour for the blessing that is already approaching. Provision is moving toward you right now that perfectly matches the specific needs you have never dared to voice aloud. The financial strain that makes future planning feel entirely futile is seen and known. The health concern you carry in quiet isolation while researching symptoms in the dark hours and reassuring others that all is well is held in my healing hands. The relational absence that loneliness fills with its particular quiet ache is acknowledged and answered by my abiding presence. None of these hidden burdens escape my watchful eye. Not a single need falls outside the boundaries of my active and ongoing intervention. My redemptive work in your life operates with comprehensive precision. I do not address one fracture while ignoring another. I move deliberately through every room and every closet and every forgotten corner where brokenness has been stored away out of sheer helplessness. I know exactly what to do with every fragment of your history, and I am actively restoring all things. Therefore, I give you a clear instruction regarding the spirit of discouragement. Do not wage war against it. Fighting a phantom gives it the dignity of a worthy adversary, which it utterly lacks. Simply acknowledge it as you would acknowledge a transient cloud passing across the face of the sun. It is real. It exists in the moment. It has temporarily reduced the warmth upon your face. Yet it is undeniably moving. It possesses no roots in the earth. It holds no dominion over the heavens. The sun has never moved from its throne. It burns with undiminished power behind the temporary veil. The cloud holds neither the permanence nor the density to remain forever. Your discouragement is merely a passing cloud. My promises remain the eternal sun. One is a fleeting atmospheric condition. The other is an everlasting source of light that preceded every shadow ever cast and will outlast every darkness that has ever existed. I place into your hands a truth to carry like a smooth and unbreakable stone. Keep it close for every moment when weariness attempts to rewrite your story once again. Everything I initiate, I will unquestionably complete. I do not merely finish the convenient projects. I do not only complete the plans that encounter minimal resistance. I bring everything to perfect fulfillment. Every work I commence reaches its divinely appointed conclusion. Every word I speak travels across time until it finds its ultimate purpose. Every promise I make arrives at its destination, regardless of the mountains of opposition it must traverse. The timeline may differ vastly from your initial expectations. The path may include unexpected detours you did not anticipate. The journey may involve seasons that appear entirely counterproductive from your current vantage point. Yet the completion rate of my word stands absolute. It has always stood absolute. Your current circumstance will never serve as the exception that shatters my perfect record. You are not trapped in a dead end. You are securely anchored. The difference between those two realities is so profound that confusing them will fundamentally alter your entire interpretation of life. To be stuck implies involuntary imprisonment in a place you never chose. To be anchored signifies deliberate positioning in a location selected for eternal strategy. You perceive the lack of forward momentum as failure. I behold the exact same stillness as profound stability. The anchor is never a punishment. It is a sacred protection. It keeps you from drifting into dangerous currents that would sweep you toward depths where rescue grows distant, and the spiritual damage would require years to repair, especially during violent storms. The temptation to release the anchor and float wherever the waves push may feel like freedom, yet it remains the most perilous form of surrender you could possibly embrace. Giving up was never inscribed in your divine narrative. Stand firm upon the rock. Stand firm not because standing feels comfortable, but because the foundation beneath your feet is utterly unshakable. Stand firm not because the wind has ceased, but because the structure bearing your weight was engineered to withstand pressures that have not even arrived yet. Stand firm, not because every question has received an answer, but because my faithful character requires no human comprehension to continue operating in your favor. You are not falling behind. You are being meticulously prepared. You are not forgotten in the shadows. You are being strategically positioned for divine purpose. You are not failing the test. You are being forged in the fire, and the furnace makes no apology for its intense heat, because it knows exactly what glorious vessel will emerge from the flames. I love you with a covenant love that never adjusts itself based on your productivity or your performance or the fluctuating state of your earthly circumstances. My affection remains steady because it flows directly from my eternal nature rather than from anything you produce. My character does not change. It has never changed. The master builder never abandons the sanctuary simply because the foundation cures slowly. The loving father never leaves the child merely because they stumble while learning to walk. I will never withdraw my covenant commitment to your life simply because the current chapter proves harder and longer and more perplexing than the seasons that preceded it. Remain steadfast in the journey. Stay within the process even when the design makes no sense to your finite mind. Remain in the necessary discomfort even when easier alternatives offer the cheap comfort of surrender. Stay in the sacred space between what was promised and what has visibly manifested. That very gap, which feels entirely empty to human senses, is precisely where the deepest spiritual transformation occurs. That is the place where abstract belief graduates into lived and unshakable conviction. That is the arena where every theological truth you have heard about me becomes every lived reality you personally experience with me. Once personal encounter has built something permanent within your soul. No argument and no voice of accusation and no season of weariness can ever dismantle it. What is forged through direct communion with the Holy One is utterly indestructible. No earthly philosophy can dismantle it. No prolonged season of doubt can erase it. No clever rhetoric can convince you that what you experienced was merely illusion. Once you have walked through the fire with me, that reality becomes part of your eternal constitution in a way that transcends mere belief and enters the sacred territory of absolute knowing. I authored every single chapter of your life story. I wrote the radiant seasons and the shadowed valleys. I penned the brief moments that passed like a gentle breath, and the prolonged trials that seemed to stretch beyond the borders of human endurance. I never inscribe surrender into the narratives of those I have called my own. I include struggle because struggle produces enduring strength. I include honest tears because holy weeping waters the ground for future resurrection. I include seasons that press against the absolute limits of what a person believes they can survive. Yet I will never write a conclusion that contradicts my eternal nature. My nature is unwavering faithfulness. My nature is perfect completion. My nature is following through on every single declaration I have spoken concerning your life. This remains true, regardless of how many wilderness seasons stand between the initial promise and its visible fulfillment. So take this living word and embed it deep into the spiritual architecture of your soul. Let it settle into the foundation alongside the prayers and the years of persistent trust that have already been poured out. Let it fill every fracture where discouragement has been searching for an entry point. When weariness returns to your doorstep, as it inevitably will before this season fully passes, let this truth be the first voice you hear. Listen not to the voice of bitter comparison. Listen not to the voice of self-condemnation. Listen not to the voice of impatience disguised as spiritual urgency. Listen only to my voice. Hear a tone that is steady and profoundly sure. Hear a presence that is unwavering and deeply warm. Hear a commitment to your life that has never, not even for a fraction of a second, entertained the possibility of abandoning what I began. I am bringing to perfect completion everything I initiated within your spirit. What I began is extraordinary beyond human measure. You may rest in that absolute reality. Rest deeply and completely. Rest without reservation or hesitation. Rest without the nagging fear that the promise might expire before it reaches your hands. It will reach you. It is already moving across the threshold of your life. Amen.